Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganata Sham Saradava Nalalida Loka Pranaya karunya gana ganatam praptasa kalyana gurnana vasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam praptasa kalyana gurnana vasya Vande Guru Shri Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Vande Guru Charanara Vrindam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Mahaprabhu ki Tana Nitya Gita Vaditra Madhya Manasura Sena Mahaprabhu ki Vaditra Madhya Manasura Sena Romancha Kampasru Taranga Bhajo Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Romancha Kampasu Taranga Bhajo Vande Guru Shri Vigrara Dana Nityanana Shingaratanama Niramajanado Shri Vigrara Dana Jukta Sabhaktam Sa Niyunjatopi Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Jukta Sabhaktam Sa Niyunjatopi Vande Chaturvedha Shri Bhagavat Prasado Svatvana Truptam Hari Bhakta Sangam Chaturvidha Shri Bhagavat Prasada Svatvana Truptam Kridva eva trupti Bhajato Shadeva Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Shiradhikama Dabayara Para Madhurya Lila Gunarupa Namna Shiradhikama Dabayara Para Madhurya Lila Pratikshana Swa Dhananarupasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Nikunja Yuno Ratikeli Siddhai Jajali Viri Jokte Apekshaniya Nikunja Yuno Ratikeli Siddhai Jajali Viri Jokte Tatrati daksha Otivalabhasya Vande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Sakshadhari Dvena Shamasta Shashri Rukta Tathava Gataiva Sadhuvi Sakshadhari Dvena Shashri Into Prabhuja Priya eva tasya Vande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Yasya Prasada Bhagavat Prasada Yasya Prasadam Nagati Kutapi Yasya Prasadam Bhagavat Prasadam Yasya Prasadam Nagati Kutapi Jayam Stubam Tasya Yasatri Sandhyam Vande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Vande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Vande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pachata Deshatarine Namaste Saraswati Deve Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pachata Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Chaitanya Chaitanya Nityananda Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Gaur Nityananda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hariyaraya Namah, Krishna Jadavaya Namah, Jadavaya Madhavaya Kesavaya Namah, Hare Gopal Govindaram Shri Madhusudan, Giridhari Gopinath Madana Mohan, Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Sita, Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavata Gita, Shri Rupa Sanatan Vataraguna, Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasaraguna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Rama, Nitai Gora Haribo, 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 Nitai Go, Haribo, 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 Nitai Go, Haribo, Nitai Gora Pramanande. Jai Vishwapara Paramsa Prabhajakacharya Suttara Sarasi Shimad, His Divine Grace, Abhachara Vina Bhakti Viranta Swami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, ISKCON Pratishta Bhiviti Samstapkacharya Vaishnava Siromani Patita Pavana Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Shri Gauriya Guru Vargapati Udhar Ki Jai, Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhattara Gunata Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Guna Sadgoswami Prabhu Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ji Ki Jai, Ananta Guru Vaishnava Vrindi Ki Jai, प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवसारी गौर भक्त वृंद की जय, जय परम दयाल श्री नित्यानंद प्रभु की जय। प्रेम नाम संकीर्तन एक जनाक प्रेम पुरुषोत्तम श्री सचिनंदन श्रीमन गौरंग श्री चैतन्य महाप्रभु गौर हरि मावरण अवतार की जय। गोलोकेर प्रमधान हरि नाम संकीर्तन जग की जय। जुग धर्म हरे कृष्ण महामंत्र की जय। बृहदांग ट्रांसलेंटल बुक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन सेवा की जय। श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गुप्तना राधा कुंड श्याम कुंड गिरिराज गोवर्धन की जय। श्री ब्रजबिम वृंदावन मथुर धाम की जय। तेलोश श्री राधा नीला माधव की जय। श्री मायापुर नवद्वीप एक चक्र धाम की जय। परम करुण श्री गौर निताय की जय। श्री पुरुषोत्तम चित्र जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय। श्री जगन्नाथ स्वामी बलदेव प्रभु स्मस्पदेव सुदर्शन चक्र भगवान की जय। भक्ति सर्व विघ्न विनाशना कर सिंह भगवान की जय। सीताराम लक्ष्मण भक्त हनुमान जी की जय। जगंगा माई जमुना माई की जय। तुलसी महारानी वृंदी देवी भक्ति देवी की जय। श्री मथुरा रानी की जय। समवेत भक्त वृंद की जय। निताय गौरी प्रमानंदे हरि बोल। All glory to the assembly bodies. All glory to the assembly bodies. All glory to the assembly bodies. All glories, all glories, all glories to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga Hari.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Pralada Ladadaine. Hiranyakashipurvakshaha.
Silatankanakalaye.
Ito Narsimha Parato Narsimha.
Ito Nisingha Parato Nisingha.
Yato Yato Yami Tato Narsimha.
Jaya Jata Jata Jami Tato Nisingha.
Bahir Narsimha Hridaye Narsimha.
Bahir Nisingha Hridaye Nisingha.
Narasimha Madim Sharanam Prapade.
Narasingha Madim Sharanam Prapade.
Tava Kara Kamalavare Nakham Adbhuta Shringam Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanuvringam Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa. Jai Jagadish Hare. Jai Jagadish Hare. Jai Jagadish Hare.
Pavakara Kamala Vare Nakam Adabhuta Singam Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanavinga Kesavadita Narari Roma. Jai Jagadish Hare. Jai Jagadish Hare. Jai Jagadish Hare.
Jaya Narsingha Dev. Jaya Narsingha Dev. Jaya Narsingha Dev. Jaya Narsingha Dev.
Jaya Nisingha Dev. Jaya Nisingha Dev. Jaya Nisingha Dev. Jaya Nisingha Dev.
Jaya Bhakta Prahlad. Jaya Bhakta Prahlad. Jaya Bhakta Prahlad. Jaya Prahlad Maharaj.
Jaya Bhakta Prahlad. Jaya Bhakta Prahlad. Bhakta Prahlad. Jaya Prahlad Maharaj.
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada.
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada.
Jaya Jaya Gurudev. 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 Jaya Jaya
Haribo, Nitai Gaur Haribo.
श्रीदेव भगवान की जय, प्रहलाद महाराज की जय।
जय श्री भक्ति पथ सर्वविघ्नाशन करि सिंह भगवान की जय। भक्त श्रेष्ठ प्रहलाद महाराज की जय। पूर्ण प्रेमानंद श्री वृंदाई तुलसी देवाय प्रिय केशव सत्य विष्णु भक्ति प्रादे देवी सतवताय नमो नमः। वृंदाई तुलसी देवाय प्रिय केशव सत्य विष्णु भक्ति प्रादे देवी सतवताय नमो नमः। वृंदाय तुलसी देवाय प्रिय केशव सत्य विष्णु भक्ति प्रादे देवी सतवताय नमो नमः। श्रीमती तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी की जय।
नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः
तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः।
तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः।
तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः।
राधा कृष्ण सेवा पावो अभिलाषी।
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 जे तो मार शरण लोए तारा वंचा पूर्ण होए।
जे तो मार शरण लाया तारा वंचा पूर्ण।
कृपा कोरी कोरो तारे वृंदावनवासी।
तुम्हें कृपा करी कर तारे वृंदावनवासी।
मोरा अभिलाष विलास कुंजे दियो बा।
मोरा विलास कुंजे दियो बा।
नयने रिबो स सदा युगल रूप राशि
Aminayane Rebo Sada Jugalaruparasi
এই নিবেদন ধর সখীর অনুগত করো
নিবেদনাদর সখিরানুগত করো
সেবাধিকার দিয়ে করো নিজ দাসী
সেবায়াধিকার দিয়ে করো নিজ দাসী
দীন কৃষ্ণ দাস কয়ে নমোর হয়ে
দীন কৃষ্ণ দাস কয় হে নমরা
শ্রী রাধা গোবিন্দা প্রেমে সদায় নবাসী
শ্রী রাধা গোবিন্দ প্রেমে সদায় নবাসী
শ্রী রাধা গোবিন্দা প্রেমে সদায় নবাসী
শ্রী রাধা গোবিন্দ প্রেমে সদায় নবাসী
তুলসী কৃষ্ণ প্রেয়সী নমো নমঃ
তুলসী কৃষ্ণ প্রেয়সী নমো নমঃ
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे
जाने काने सा पापानि ब्रह्मात्तरे कनेशा तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पादे पादे
यानि कानि सा पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
जयो तुलसी महारानी जयो तुलसी महारानी जयो तुलसी महारानी जयो तुलसी महारानी
Jaya Krishna Maharani Jaya Krishna Maharani Jaya Krishna Maharani Jaya
जयो वृंदा देवी जयो वृंदा देवी जयो वृंदा देवी जयो वृंदा देवी
Jaya Vrinda Devi Jaya Vrinda Devi Jaya Vrinda Devi Jaya Vrinda Devi
निताय गौर हरि बो हरि बो हरि बोल निताय गौर हरि बोल
Nitai Gaura Hari Bo Hari Bo Hari Bo Nitai Gaura Hari Bo
तुलसी महारानी की जय
Shri Vrindai Tulasi Devai Priyaya Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satavataye Namo Namaha Vrindayai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Deve Satavatai Namo Namaha. Vrindayai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satavatai Namo Namaha. Srimati Tulasi Maharani Vrindari Vikijaya. Oh Tulasi, beloved Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire is to obtain the service of Shri Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes shelter of you has wishes fulfilled, bestow your mercy upon him, you make him resident of Vrindavan. My desire is that you also give me a residence in pleasure groves of Shri Vrindavan Dham. Thus within my vision, I will always behold beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower of Kavadhyams of Raj. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me your own maid servant. This very fallen and lowly servant of Krishna praise. May I always swim in love with Shri Radha and Govind. Srimati Tulasi Maharani Vrindadevi Ki Jai. Jagat Sarvam Govinda Virahirame Asri Savapadaratam Pinastumam Adashana Madman Atam Karotuma Tadatava Viladatulam Pato Matpranatas Tusa Evana Para Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sri Krishna Ki Jai. Namo Mahabharanaya. Krishna Prema Pradati Krishna. Glory to the Sri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart with the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life, repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan moment is the prime benediction for humanity at large, because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we're always anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, And thus you have hundreds of millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names you have invested all your transcendental energies. There is not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness, you enable us to easily approach you by holy names, but I'm so unfortunate I have no attraction for them. Once you chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself Lord and strong in the street, one should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your cause to us and service birth after birth. O Son of Majananda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor, yet somehow or other I have fallen in this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, only my eyes will be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name. When my voice choke up, and with the hairs on my body stand on the end of the recitation of your name. O Govinda, feeling your separation, I'm considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I feel all vacant in the world in your absence.
I know no one but Krishna as my Lord. He shall remain so even if he handles me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, but he is always my worshipful Lord unconditionally. Shri Shri Shikshak Sakam Ki Jai. There are 10 offenses in matter of chanting the holy name of the Lord that must be avoided. They are as follows. 1. Blasphemy of devotee, dedicate the lives propagating holy names of the Lord.
2.
Consider names of demigods like Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma to be equal to independent names of Lord Vishnu.
3.
To disobey the orders of the spiritual master.
4.
Blasphemy of Vedic literature or literature pursuant to the vision.
5.
Consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna's imagination.
6. To give some interpretation
on the holy name of the Lord.
7.
To commit sinful activities on the strength of chanting the holy names of the Lord.
8. To
consider the chanting of Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which are offered in the Vedas as fruitive activities for karma kanda.
9.
To instruct the faithless person about the glories of the holy name.
And 10.
To not have complete faith in the chanting of the holy name and to maintain material attachments, even after understanding so many instructions. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be a Vaishnava must carefully guard against these 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve the desired success. Krishna Prema. Now let us offer our most humble obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. They are just like entire trees who can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Vancha kalpa tarabhyascha kripa sindhubhyevcha patitamam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha vaishnavata kuraki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam Grantaraj Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Janmadyasya yato niviyad itaratas chate sovigyaswarat.
Janmadyasya yatam vayad itaratas chate sovigyaswarat.
Tene Brahma Hridaya Adhikavaye Muyanti Yatsuraya.
Tene Brahma Hridaya Adhikavaye Muyanti Yatsuraya.
Tejo Varimidam Yata Vinimayo Yatra Trisargo Misha.
Tejo Varimridam Jata Vinimayo Jatra Trisargo Misha.
Damnasvina Sada Nirasta Kuhakam Satyam Param Dhimahi.
Damnasvina Sada Nirasta Kuhakam Satyam Param Dhimahi.
O my Lord Shri Krishna, O Son of Vasudeva.
O my Lord Shri Krishna, Son of Vasudeva.
O all-pervading personality of Godhead.
O all-pervading personality of Godhead.
For my respectful obeisances unto you.
I offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
I meditate upon Lord Sri Krishna because he is the absolute truth,
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth.
and the primeval cause of all causes,
And the primeval cause of all causes,
of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes.
of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universe.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all
He is
manifestations.
directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
And he is independent because there's no other cause beyond him.
And he is independent because there's no other cause beyond him.
It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji,
It's the only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge into the heart of Brahmaji,
the original living being.
the original living being.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion,
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
as one is bewildered by the illusory representations
As one is bewildered by the illusory representation
of water seen on fire or land seen on water.
of water seen to fire or land seen to water.
Only because of him do the material universes,
Only because of him do the material universes,
temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature,
temporarily manifested by the reaction of the three modes of nature,
appear factual although they are unreal.
appear factual although they are
And therefore meditate upon him, Lord Sri Krishna,
I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna,
who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode,
who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode,
which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world.
which is forever free from the illusory representations of the
I
material world.
meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth.
Dharma projita kaitravota,
Dharma prujita kaitavutra,
paramo nirmatsaranam satam,
paramo nirmasharanam satam,
vedyam vastavam atravastu,
vedyam vastavam astravastu,
shivadam tapa trayon mulanam,
shivadam tapo tremoranam,
Shrimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite,
Shrimad Bhagavate Mahamuni
Kim va parer Ishvaraha,
Kimva paririshvara,
Sadyo Hridi Avarudyate Tra,
Sadyurudya varidya titra,
Krite Bhi Sususabhistakshanat.
Kritibhi shushu shubhistat kyanat.
Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated.
Completely rejecting all religious activities with material motivated.
This Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth,
This Bhagavad Purana propounds the highest truth,
which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart.
which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart.
The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
The highest truth, the reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
Such truth uproots the threefold miseries.
Such a truth uproots the threefold miseries.
As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam,
As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavad,
by this culture of knowledge,
by this culture of
the
knowledge,
Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
the Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
Nigama kalpataror galitam phalam,
Nigama kalpataror galitam phalam,
sukhamukad amrita dravya samyatam,
Sukamukhatam Rita Drava Sangitam,
pibata bhagavatam rasam alayam,
Pibata Bhagavatam Rasamalayam,
muhur aho raska bhuvibhavakaha.
Mura Horasika
O
Bhuvibabuka.
expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam,
O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam.
the mature fruit of the desiratory Vedic literatures.
The mature fruit, the desired tree of Vedic literature.
It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami.
It emanated from the lips of Shishwadev Goswami.
Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful.
Therefore, this food has become more tasteful.
Although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all,
Although the nectarian juice was so relishable for all,
including liberated souls.
including liberated souls.
Shinvatam Swakata Krishna,
Sharvatam Swakata Krishna,
Punya Shravana Kirtana,
Punya Shravana Kirtana,
Hridyantaksto hi abhadrani,
Dhyantastu hi abhadrani,
Vidunoti Srihitsatam.
Vidu noti suritsatam.
To hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures,
To hear about Krishna from the Vedic
or to
Lord,
hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita,
or to hear from it directly from the Bhagavad Gita.
is itself righteous activity.
It is self-righteous activity.
And for one who hears about Krishna,
And for one who hears about Krishna,
Lord Krishna, who is dwelling in everyone's heart,
Lord Krishna is dwelling within everyone's heart,
acts as a best wishing friend,
acts as the best wishing
and
friend,
purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him.
and it purifies his body who constantly engage in hearing.
Nasta prayesu abhadresu,
Nasta prayeshwa bhadrishu,
nityam bhagavata sevaya,
Nityam Bhagavata Seva,
bhagavati uttama sloke,
Bhagavati Uttama Shloke,
bhaktir bhavati naistaki.
Bhakti Bhavati Nastikhi.
In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge.
In this way, the devotee naturally develops dormant transcendental knowledge.
As he hears more about the Bhagavatam, as he hears more about the, as he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam,
as he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam
and from the devotees,
and from the devotees,
he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord.
he becomes fixed in devotional service of the Lord.
Tadarajastamo bhava
Tadarajastamo bhava
kamalobhadayaschaye
kamalobhadayaschaye
cheta etar anavidam
Jeta etarna vidam
stitvam sattve prasidati.
sitam sarve prasidati.
By development of devotional service,
By development of devotional service,
one becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance,
one becomes freed from the mode of passion
and thus material lust and avarice are diminished.
and thus material lust and avarice are diminished.
Evam prasana manaso
Evam prasana manaso
bhagavad bhakti yogataha
Bhagavad Bhakti Yoga
bhagavad tattva vijnanam
Bhagavad Tattva Vijnanam
mukta sangasya jayate.
Mukta Sangha Sajayate.
When these impurities are wiped away,
When those impurities are wiped
the
away,
candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness,
the candidate remains steady in his position of pure good,
becomes enlivened by devotional service,
becomes enlivened by devotional service,
and understands the science of God perfectly.
and understands the science of God perfectly.
Vidyate hridaya grantis,
Vidyate Hridaya
chidyante sarva samsaya,
Vidyante Sarva Samshaya
chiyante jasya karmani,
Jiyante Sachakarmani
drista evat manishwari.
Drusta Evadmaneshwari.
Thus, Bhakti Yoga severs the hard knot of material affection
Thus the Bhakti Yoga severs the hard knot of material affection
and enables one to come at once to the stage of a samsayam samagram,
and enables us to come at once to the stage of Samshara Samagrama,
understanding of the supreme absolute truth, personality of Godhead.
understanding the supreme absolute true personality of Godhead.
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness
can one understand the science of Krishna.
can one understand the science of Krishna.
Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 19, Text number 20. Nava idam rajarsi varya chitram
Nava idam rajarshi varya chitram
bhavat sukrishnam samanu ratesu
bhavat sukrishnam samanuvrateshu
yedyasanam rajakad kirita justam
Yidyasanam raja kirija justam
sadyo jahur bhagavat parsava kamaha.
Sadyo Jahur Bhagavat Parsvakama.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. The sages said, O chief of all the saintly kings of the Pandu dynasty, who are strictly in the line of Lord Sri Krishna, it is not at all astonishing that you give up your throne, which is decorated with the helmets of many kings, to achieve eternal association with the personality of Godhead. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Foolish politicians who hold political administrative posts think that the temporary posts they occupy are the highest material gain of life. And therefore they stick to those posts even up to the last moment of life, without knowing that achievement of liberation is one of the associates of the Lord in his eternal abode. Without knowing that achievement of liberation as one of the associates of the Lord in his eternal abode is the highest gain of life. The human life is meant for achieving this end. The Lord has assured us in the Bhagavad Gita many times that going back to Godhead, his eternal abode, is the highest achievement. Prahlad Maharaj, while praying to Lord Nrsimha, said, "O my Lord, I'm very much afraid of the materialistic way of life. And I am not the least afraid of your ghastly, ferocious feature as Narasimhadev. This materialistic way of life is something like a grinding stone, and we're being crushed by it. We have fallen into this horrible whirlpool of the tossing waves of life, and thus, my Lord, I pray at your lotus feet to call me back to you, your eternal abode as one of your servitors. This is the experience of the materialistic, this is the summit liberation of this materialistic way of life. I have very bitter experience of the materialistic way of life, in whichever species of life I have taken birth, compelled by the force of my own activities, I have very painfully experienced two things, namely, separation from my beloved and meeting with what is not wanted. And to counteract them, the remedies which I have undertook were more dangerous than the disease itself. So I drift from one point to another, birth after birth, and I pray to you, therefore, to give me a shelter at your lotus feet. The Pandava kings, who are more than many saints of the world, captivated by the glare of the imperial throne, knew the bitter results of the materialistic way of life. They were never captivated by the glare of the imperial throne they occupied, and they sought always the opportunity of being called by the Lord to associate with him eternally. Maharaj Parikshit was the worthy grandson of Maharaj Yudhisthira. Maharaj Yudhisthira gave up the imperial throne to his grandson, and similarly, Maharaj Parikshit, the grandson of Maharaj Yudhisthira, gave up the imperial throne to his son Janmejaya. That is the way of all the kings in the dynasty, because they are all strictly in the line of Lord Krishna. Thus, the devotees of the Lord are never enchanted by the glare of materialistic life, and they live impartially, unattached to objects of the false, illusory, materialistic way of life. Srimad Bhagavad, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So, why does it say that the throne of Maharaj Parikshit was decorated with the helmets of many kings to achieve, helmets of many kings? Well, it shows that he had the allegiance and tithing and submission of all the worldly kings, and when you have their helmets as decoration of the throne, that means that each helmet represents like a country. So this was proof that Maharaj Parikshit, and previous to him, the Pandu dynasty, were leaders of the whole world. There was one world government. So the experience that a person has being a leader is oftentimes harrowing, because one has to deal with many different people who have many different agendas, many different levels of understanding, and to keep everyone working harmoniously without fighting is quite a challenge. So a king has to be able to subdue, either by convincingly speaking or by force, all the, let's say, all the conflicting arguments that take place when there's a large group of people trying to do something. Ultimately, the king has the last word. And as long as the king is a saintly person, there is fairness based on Vedic knowledge, not fairness based on what feels good, but based on Vedic knowledge. So there's another verse in the 7th canto, 9th chapter, 24th verse, where Prahlad Maharaj says, "My dear Lord, Now I have complete experience concerning the worldly opulence, mystic power, longevity, and other material pleasures enjoyed by all living entities, from Lord Brahma down to the ant. As powerful time, you destroy them all. Therefore, because of my experience, I do not wish to possess them. My dear Lord, I request you to place me in touch with your pure devotee and let me serve him as a sincere servant. Well, here, this is the voice of experience and self-realization. And Prabhupada writes, by studying Srimad Bhagavatam, every intelligent man or woman or person can get experience like that of Prahlad Maharaj through historical incidents mentioned in this great literature of spiritual knowledge. Well, yeah, there are different types of people. First-class people, they hear from authority and they understand. Second-class people hear from authority, but they have to see it to believe it. The third-class people, they hear from authority, they see it, but they have to do it to understand. And fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, 10th class people, they hear, they see, they do, and they still don't understand. So, what is Prahlad Maharaj saying here? He said, my dear Lord, now I have complete experience concerning the worldly opulence, mystic power, longevity, and other material pleasures enjoyed by all living entities, from Lord Brahma down to the ant. As powerful time, you destroy them all. Therefore, because of my experience, I do not wish to possess them. My dear Lord, I request you to place me in touch with your pure devotee and let me serve him as a sincere student. And then Prabhupada writes, by studying Srimad Bhagavatam, not by going to the nightclub, not by going to the casino, not by watching this movie or that movie, not by doing this or doing that. Simply by reading Srimad Bhagavatam, every intelligent man can get experience like that of Prahlad Maharaj through the historical incidents mentioned in this great literature of spiritual knowledge. What are those historical incidents? They're the histories of people who succeeded tremendously by being Krishna conscious, and people who were complete failures because of lack of Krishna consciousness. So you see both sides. The path of spiraling down to demoniac life and the path of going up back to Godhead. And there's analysis of a very thorough analysis in the Srimad Bhagavatam of both paths. One is called Pavriti Marg and the other is called Nivriti Marg. Pavriti Marg is the path of sense gratification, and Nivriti Marg is the path of spiritual renunciation. Okay, so by following in the footsteps of Prahlad Maharaj, one should gain thorough experience that all material opulence is perishable at every moment. Even this body, for which we try to acquire so many sensual pleasures, may perish at any time. The soul, however, is eternal. Nahanyate hanyamane sarire. The soul is never vanquished. And even when the body is destroyed, an intelligent man, therefore, should care for the happiness of the spirit soul, not the body. Even if one receives a body with a long duration of life, like those of Lord Brahma and other great demigods, it will also be destroyed. And therefore an intelligent man should be concerned with the imperishable spirit soul. To save oneself, one must take shelter of a pure devotee. Narottam Das Thakur therefore says, Chadiya Vaishnava Seva Nistara Payeche Keva. If one wants to save himself from material nature's onslaughts, which arise because of the material body, one must become Krishna conscious and try to fully understand Krishna. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 4.9, Janmakarma chame divyam evam yo veti tattvataha. One should understand Krishna in truth, and thus one can do only, and this one can do only by serving a pure devotee. Thus, Prahlada Maharaj prays that Lord Nrsingadeva place him in touch with a pure devotee and servant instead of awarding him material opulence. Because the Lord was so pleased with Prahlada Maharaj that he offered him any material opulence that he wanted. But what did Prahlada Maharaj say? We'll get to that in a second. Every intelligent man within this material world must follow Prahlada Maharaj. Mahajana yena gata sapanta. Prahlada Maharaj, one should always follow the path chalked out by pure devotees, or the Mahajanas. Prahlada Maharaj did not want to enjoy the estate left by his father. Rather, he wanted to become a servant of the Lord. The illusory human civilization that perpetually endeavors for happiness through material advancement is rejected by Prahlada Maharaj and those who strictly follow in his footsteps. Well, almost every president, I guess every president, is saying, vote for me, and you'll have, every Sunday you'll have a chicken on your plate, and you'll have a washing machine and dryer, and you'll have 2 or 3 cars in your parking lot. They used to say that in the 1950s and 60s. Now they say, well, you get free education, you get free Medicare, you can get free sex change, you can get free this, you can get free that. Right? So they keep promising sense gratification. And the majority of people want sense gratification. So they say, yay, and vote for that person. But what does Prahlada Maharaj say? Prahlada Maharaj did not want to enjoy the estate left by his father. Rather, he wanted to become a servant of the Lord. The illusory human civilization that perpetually endeavors for happiness through material advancement is rejected by Prahlada Maharaj and those who strictly follow in his footsteps. There are different types of material opulence known technically as bhukti, mukti, and siddhi. Bhukti refers to being situated in a very good position, like a position with the demigods and higher planetary systems, where one can enjoy material sense gratification to the greatest extent. Mukti refers to being disgusted with material advancement and thus desiring to become one with the Supreme Lord. And siddhi refers to executing a severe type of meditation like that of the yogis to attain 8 kinds of perfection, anima, mahima, lagima, etc. All who desire such material advancement through bhukti, mukti, or siddhi are punishable in due course of time, and they return to material activities. Prahlada Maharaj rejected them all. He simply wanted to engage as an apprentice under the guidance of a pure devotee. So, this purport and this verse reveal an astonishing fact, that even the karma yogis, the jnana yogis, and the mystic yogis, basically, because of their material desires to have certain benedictions in the material world for sense gratification, they go to hell. Imagine that. They go to hell. The worshippers of the demigods, the worshippers of the Brahman effulgence, and those who become who can master the yoga siddhis like Durvasa Muni, they have a very dark future, according to the laws of nature. This is another big point. This is why Prahlada Maharaj says, Namam pralo bhavot patya saktam kame sutaya varai tat sangha bito nirvino mumukshus tvam upasritaha. Prahlada Maharaj said, my dear Lord, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, because I was born in an atheistic family, I am naturally attached to material enjoyment. Therefore, kindly do not tempt me with these illusions I am very much afraid of material conditions, and I desire to be liberated from the materialistic life. It is for this reason that I have taken shelter of your lotus feet. So that doesn't mean, when he says, I want to be liberated from the materialistic life, it doesn't mean he wants to perform karma yoga to be elevated to the higher material planets where the sense enjoyment is much longer and much more intense. No, he doesn't want that. He doesn't want to become a jnana yogi and understand what's Brahman and what's not Brahman and merge into the Brahmajyoti. No. And he doesn't want to be a mystic yogi and master the eightfold perfections or siddhis and have tremendous wealth and power. No, he doesn't want any of that. He wants to be the servant of the servant of the servant of Krishna, an apprentice, and always be engaged in the devotional service of the Lord without and with the ethos of nirmama nirahankara. Nothing belongs to me, and I have no false ego or false pretensions, thinking I'm this body or anything in relation to this body is mine. So, then Prabhupada in this verse 7.10.2 says, materialistic life means attachment to the body and everything in relationship to the body. This attachment is based on lusty desires for sense gratification, specifically sexual enjoyment. Kamais taistar hitagana. When one is too much attached to material enjoyment, he is bereft. That's a verse. Kamais taistar hitagana is a verse in the 7th chapter. Let me just see where that verse is. The 7th chapter. Kamais taistar hitagana. Prapadyante nya devata. Tam tam niyamam astaya pakritya nitak swaya. And that is 7th chapter, 20th verse. Those whose intelligence has been stolen by material desires surrender unto demigods and follow the particular rules and regulations of worship according to their own natures. So, it says here, when one is too attached to material enjoyment, he or she is bereft of all knowledge. Hita jnana. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, those who are attached to material enjoyment are mostly inclined to worship the demigods to procure various material opulences. They are especially attached to worship of the goddess Durga and Lord Shiva, because this transcendental couple can offer their devotees all material opulence. But what's ironic, Lord Shiva doesn't even have a house. He lives under a tree. And so does his wife. His wife doesn't have a washing machine, doesn't have a credit card, doesn't have a car. He has nothing. He doesn't give her anything. But yet she's loyal to him because he's such a good person. But they have nothing. They have no opulence. But yet people worship them to get opulence. Very interesting. They don't get the message. The message is, all that opulence is going to be taken away from you. Therefore you should live like us. Like Uma Devi or Parvati and myself. We're living completely in nature, and we also depend on the mercy of Krishna. Of course, they don't get that message, and none of the Shiva Brahmanas give that message. Do they give that message in Maharashtra? No, because they don't understand Shiva and Parvati. They have the wrong understanding of them. They're especially attached to worship of the goddess Durga and Lord Shiva because this transcendental couple can offer their devotees all material opulence. Prahlad Maharaja, however, was detached from all material enjoyment. He therefore took shelter of the lotus feet of Lord Nrsimhadev and not the feet of any demigod. It is to be understood that if one really wants release from this material world, from the threefold miseries, and from Janma Mityu Jara Vyadi, birth, death, old age, and disease, one must take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for without the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one cannot get release from materialistic life. Lord Shiva can't give you that. Lord Brahma can't give you that. None of the demigods can give complete release. from materialistic life. Atheistic men are very much attached to material enjoyment. Therefore, if they get some opportunity to achieve more and more material enjoyment, they take it. Prahlad Maharaj, however, was very careful in this regard. Although born of a materialistic father, because he was a devotee, he had no material desires. Anya bilasita sunyam, jnana karmadya navratam. So this is very interesting. Prahlad Maharaj tells Lord Nrsingadev, I'm very much afraid of material conditions or the material way of life. He's not afraid of Lord Nrsingadev. Everybody else is afraid of Lord Nrsingadev. His fierce bodily construction, and his fierce roar, and his fierce nails, and so forth. Everyone's afraid. Even Lord Brahman and demigods are afraid of Lord Nrsingadev. Prahlad Maharaj is not afraid. But what is he afraid of? He's afraid of materialistic way of life. So what should we be afraid of? What should we be afraid of? Then, also in Srimad Bhagavatam, 7th canto, 7th chapter, 24th verse. Again, it says, one may argue, when we analyze the body, we find a head, hands, legs, a belly, blood, bones, urine, stool, and so on. But after everything is considered, where is the existence of the soul? A sober man, however, avails himself of this Vedic instruction. Yeah, they study biology, right, in high school and in college. They dissect bodies. When I was in college, I had to dissect a frog and learn all about the frog's, his legs, his intestines, this thing, that thing. They didn't tell us anything about the soul. It's not in the textbook, you see. Very interesting. So, where is the existence of the soul? A sober man, however, avails himself of this Vedic instruction. You're only going to learn about the soul in Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam. You're not going to learn it in college advanced biology. No, it's not advanced biology. It's advanced ignorance. Yato va imani bhutani jayante, yena jatani jivanti, yat prayanti abhisam vishanti, tad vijij nasasva tad brahmeti. It's the Taittiriya Upanishad 3.1.1. That is, that a person can understand that the head, hands, legs, and indeed the entire body have grown on the basis of the soul. If the soul is within, the body, head, hands, and legs grow. But otherwise, they do not. A dead child does not grow up, for the soul is not present. If by careful analysis of the body one still cannot find the existence of the soul, this is due to ignorance. That's what's called university education. They're teaching you ignorance in the name of knowledge. They're asking you to dissect the body, and they will, if you say, well, I'm looking for the soul in the body, they say, are you crazy? That's all superstition. That's some religious nonsense. That doesn't exist. If you want to pass this course, just get that silly notion out of your mind. You see? That's what these people are. They're nonsense people. They're demons. They're teaching you ignorance, not knowledge. And someone said, well, wait a minute. They can go, let's say you have a heart attack. They can put in some stents and heal you, and you can live longer. Why are you saying it's knowledge? Obviously, it's a type of knowledge. All right, maybe they don't talk about the soul, but they can help you if you have a heart attack. They can help you if you have a urinary tract disorder, or they can help you this thing and that. Yeah, that's true. But ultimately, that doesn't solve the problem of birth, death, old age, and disease. It just prolongs it. And most people, like I had a friend of mine, not a friend, but it was a relative of mine. When I went to the funeral of one of my brothers, I met him. I hadn't seen him for a long time. And all he was talking about is how he had a heart surgery, and he was so thankful to the surgeons. They saved his life, and now he's still going to live a few more years. That's all he was talking about. He didn't ask me to, well, I know you're in some kind of a spiritual thing. You got anything to tell me about that? I don't know too much about spiritual life. I do this, and I go to Christmas and Easter, but church, but I don't really know much about it. No, he didn't ask me a question. He was telling me all about, the blood and gore of the operation that he had, and now he's so happy because he can live a few more years. This is ignorance. This is foolishness. This is sad. So, therefore, the Vedas inform us, however, that chemical combinations do not constitute the living force. The living force is the Atma and Paramatma, and the body grows on the basis of that living force. The fruit of a tree grows and undergoes 6 kinds of changes because of the presence of the tree. If there were no tree, there could be no question of the growth and maturity of fruit. Therefore, beyond the existence of the body are the Paramatma and Atma within the body. This is the first understanding of spiritual knowledge. So these people don't even have the first understanding of spiritual knowledge. They have nothing. Just all this vein and this capillary and this artery and this bone and that bone, and you have to memorize all the different names of the bones and the arteries and the ligaments and the plasma system and the blood system, and there's intestines and there's stool and there's urine and there's pus and there's wax and there's tears and there's saliva and there's nails and there's hair. That's all they're studying. They never talk about the soul. So, therefore, beyond the existence of the body are the Paramatma and Atma within the body. This is the first understanding of spiritual knowledge explained in Bhagavad Gita. Dehinosmin yata dehi. The body exists because of the presence of the Supreme Lord and the Jiva, which is part of the Lord. This is further explained by the Lord himself in Bhagavad Gita 9:4. Maya tatam idam sarvam jagat avyakta murtina matstani sarvabhutani na te chaham te suvastitaha. By me, in my unmanifested form, this entire universe is pervaded. All beings are in me, but I am not in them. The Supreme Soul exists everywhere. The Vedas enjoin sarvam klavidam brahma. Everything is Brahman, or an expansion of Brahman's energies. Sutre manigana iva, everything rests on the Lord, just like pearls strung together on a thread. The thread is the principal Brahman. He is the supreme cause, the supreme Lord upon whom everything rests. Matak parataran nanyat. Thus we must study the Atma and Paramatma, the individual soul and the supersoul, upon whom the entire material cosmic manifestation rests. This is explained by the Vedic statement, Yatova imani bhutani jayante, yena jatani jivanti. So, nowhere are they giving this knowledge of Atma and Paramatma. Oh yeah, they talk about, the Mayavadis talk about it. They say, Atma becomes Paramatma, which is nonsense. So everywhere you turn, there's nonsense in this world today. Very few people are speaking the truth. That's why Prabhupada came, to defeat Mayavad and Sunyavad, impersonalist philosophies, and explain the truth. Then on 7th canto, 7th chapter, 41st verse, again Prahlad Maharaj is explaining, a materialistic, I'm not sure if it's Prahlad Maharaj speaking, I'll have to look again. A materialistic person, thinking himself very advanced in intelligence, continually acts for economic development. But again and again, as enunciated in the Vedas, he is frustrated by material activities, either in this life or in the next. Indeed, the results one obtains are inevitably the opposite of those one desires. Well, if you would ask, let's say, Bill Gates today, Are you frustrated? Are your expectations the opposite of what you desired? Are you frustrated by material activities, either in this life or in the next? Well, yeah, he was frustrated. That's why he resigned his position as CEO. You know, he goes to Las Vegas for all the IT people go there for this annual what do you call it? Conference. Yeah, not only conference, it's a fair. Everybody comes to show their latest, equipment and software and things like that. So he goes to show, I think it was a Microsoft 6 or 7 or one of those new operating system, and he turns his computer on, and it boots up, and then he types something in, and the whole thing crashed. You hear about that? Yeah, the whole thing crashed. You know how embarrassing that is in front of everybody? And he's supposed to show his new operating system. That means that all the guys that worked on it, they were all nonsense, right? And the boss, who thinks, he's going to have a great success, the whole thing turned around a failure, right? And then for years, Microsoft was behind the achievement, let's say, the rising achievements of the internet. Then now they've caught up again. But you see, there's always going to be frustration because human beings are not meant to dedicate their life to economic development, because economic development is a very uncertain thing. It can easily turn around and become economic catastrophe. And that's what we saw. Trump based his whole re-election strategy on the economy. And in a couple of weeks, the whole economy crashed, right? So you see, you cannot depend on economic development as the salvation of humanity. But all the politicians are talking about it all the time, and the businessmen are talking about it. A materialistic person, thinking himself very advanced in intelligence, continually acts for economic development. But again and again, as enunciated in the Vedas, he is frustrated by material activities, either in this life or in the next. Indeed, the results one obtains are inevitably the opposite of those one desires. And then Prabhupada says, no one has ever achieved the results he desired from material activities. That's a big statement. On the contrary, everyone has been frustrated again and again. Look at Hitler from 1933 to 1945. What is that? It's 12 years. In less than 12 years, they tremendously improved the German economy, science, technology, social services, everything. Right? They had what might have been considered the strongest army and the best military equipment in the world. Their military equipment was far superior to American and Russian military equipment, right? And they had an army of over 3 million trained men, right? Still they lost the war. Yes, and they lost everything. And they were devastated by the war. If you actually look at all the devastation that took place and the number of people, Germans that died, there must have been at least 5 million or more Germans that were killed in World War II. I mean, they were being slaughtered, right? They slaughtered themselves, but then they were slaughtered also. Right? So the outcome was the opposite of what they expected. Therefore, one must not waste his time in such material activities for sensual pleasure, either in this life or in the next. So many nationalists, economists, and other ambitious persons have tried for happiness individually or collectively, but history proves that they have all been frustrated. In recent history, we have seen many political leaders work hard for individual and collective economic development, but they have all failed. This is the law of nature. Now, if we wrote a letter to Trump, you know, like in the second or third year, and telling him, you're going to fail, buddy. It's predicted here in the Srimad Bhagavatam, you're going to fail. He would have laughed at it. Say, are you crazy? You know, I've got the greatest economy in the history of the American, democracy, and it's roaring. And all of a sudden, in a couple of weeks, the whole thing collapses. You see. So, but history proves that they have all been frustrated. In recent history, we have seen many political leaders work hard for individual and collective economic development, but they have all failed. This is the law of nature, as clearly explained in the next verse. The next verse, 7:42. In this material world, every materialist desires to achieve happiness and diminish his distress, and therefore he acts accordingly. Actually, however, one is happy as long as one does not endeavor for happiness. Whoa, have you ever heard that? Have you ever heard such a thing? Only Prabhupada can write like that. He says, actually, however, one is happy as long as one does not endeavor for happiness. As soon as one begins his activities for happiness, his conditions of distress begin. This is amazing. This is unbelievable what he's saying here. But no, it is believable if you study history. You study Hitler. You study Trump. You study Obama. You study, just like they were making fun of Obama in his second term. And I went to this one, where did I go? There was a parade in downtown Seattle. And this was like, you know, during Obama's second term. And there was one float coming by. They had a big, like, statue of Obama. And there was a big type of, what do you call that? Anyway, some kind of writing on the cart, and it said, it mimicked Martin Luther King in his famous speech, "I have a dream," and it said, "I have a drone," because he had used the drone to kill some people, right? Some terrorists or something. So he made that, you know, American strategy of killing terrorists with drones, right? So they were making fun of him. These were his people making fun of him, right? These were all socialists and communists, and you know, in Seattle. It's unbelievable. So one is happy as long as one does not endeavor for happiness. As soon as one begins his activities for happiness, his conditions of distress begin. And Prabhupada writes, every conditioned soul is bound by the laws of material nature, as described in Bhagavad Gita. Prakriti kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasaha. Bhagavad Gita 3.27. Everyone has achieved a certain type of body given by material nature according to the instructions of the Supreme Personality Godhead. The Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart, O Arjuna, and is directing the wanderings of all living entities who are seated as on a machine made of material energy. 1861. So now what have we learned? We have learned that everything depends on our desire. If we desire sense gratification, Krishna facilitates. If we desire Krishna, Krishna facilitates. If we desire Krishna, Krishna protects us and helps us avoid falling down and continuing progressively on the path of devotion. If we desire sense gratification, Krishna gives that to Shiva and Durga. And he says, okay, give them what they want and then teach them a lesson, a hard lesson. So Hitler got everything he wanted. He became chancellor. He took over the army. He completely took control of the economy, the banking system. He started killing people he thought were not worthy of being human, gypsies and communists and Jews and mentally retarded people. They were Germans also, and they were German communists. He killed them. He just killed them, right? He got complete control. And then he started invading countries, and he was successful. He eventually succeeded in invading and conquering France. That was the pinnacle of his success. He went to Paris, and he was taken personally to visit all the major attractions of Paris. He was shown the opera, only himself and a few other generals, and the superintendent or the attendant of the opera house in the early morning hours showed him everything, and he was amazed. He was very impressed by it, and he really thought that Paris was probably the most beautiful city in the world. And then he went to the Jardin Tuileries, and he went to Place de la Concorde, and all these different places he visited early in the morning. And then there was a gigantic parade of the Nazis, the army, and their military equipment through the Arc de Triomphe, or the Triumphant Arc on the Champs-Élysées. This was the pinnacle of his success, right? And it all went downward after that, until everything was destroyed in that country. So, same thing happened to the Japanese. They were very successful. And then little by little, they lost everything. They were completely destroyed by 2 atomic bombs. It's unbelievable what happened to them. So, and it all happened very quickly. In just a 10, 12, 13-year period, the ascendancy and the descendancy. So, therefore, Prabhupada says, the Vedas enjoin that one should not try to increase happiness or decrease distress, for this is futile, meaning useless. Tasyaiva hetu prayateta kovida. One should work for self-realization, not for economic development, which is impossible to improve. Without endeavor, one can get the amount of happiness and distress for which he is destined, and one cannot change this. Therefore, it is better to use one's time for advancement in the spiritual life of Krishna consciousness. One should not waste his valuable life as a human being. It is better to utilize this life for developing Krishna consciousness without ambitions for so-called happiness or material happiness. Anyway, this is not a negative narrative. This is the truth. And but then the person said, well, okay, should I just quit and just sit at home and chant Hare Krishna, and then finally I'll lose my mortgage, and I'll end up homeless, and the kids will be starving, and they won't go to school, and my wife will be upset. Is that what I should do? No. No. We have to learn to dovetail your economic success, dovetail your social life, dovetail your family life, dovetail everything into Krishna consciousness. So, and the proof is, you have Prahlad Maharaj. He's very rich, much richer than anything Bezos or Gates could ever imagine. He was king of the whole universe, not just the earth, the whole universe, right? Dhruva Maharaj, another one. Priyavata Maharaj, Yudhisthira Maharaj, Parikshit Maharaj, Janmanjaya. All these people were extremely rich. They were all devotees. But they used their wealth to further Krishna consciousness, you see. And they dovetailed all their activities, family life, everything into Krishna consciousness. So we should talk about this, called the art of work, Yoga Koshalam. And finally it says, 7.124, and Srimad Bhagavatam, my dear king, the conditioned soul, being in the bodily conception of life, considers his body to be his self and considers everything in relationship with the body to be his. Because he has this wrong conception of life, he's subjected to dualities like praise and chastisement. Only when a conditioned soul accepts the body as himself does he feel the effects of chastisement or praise. Then he determines one person to be his enemy and another his friend, and wants to chastise the enemy and welcome the friend. This creation of friends and enemies is a result of one's bodily conception of life. Analyze Trump's presidency for 4 years, and you'll see he made friends and enemies every day. Friends and enemies every day because of bodily conception of life. So, you don't have to do these things to understand them. You simply have to hear Srimad Bhagavatam because it's already been analyzed. And then, if you want to see it, you just read the newspaper. And you'll see it. You'll see it that it's going on right now. It hasn't changed, from Roman times to today, or nor will it change in the future. Anyone who doesn't understand Bhagavad Gita will make all these mistakes. Because they're laws of nature. These are laws of nature. You cannot change them. Okay? So we'll talk more about this again. Thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Any questions?
So Maharaj, you mentioned about the endeavor to happiness is actually the distress, like Prabhupada said that, something like that. So,
let me read exactly what he says. He says that it says. Anyway, go ahead. Yes, you.
Yeah. So the question is.
One is happy as long as one does not endeavor for happiness.
Right.
One as long as one. But so Maharaj, but our soul is like its general tendency or whatever.
No,
it's
look,
eternal.
don't get confused. He's talking about material happiness.
Okay.
There is such a thing as spiritual happiness.
It's not general, like it's just material.
Yeah, it's not all happiness.
Okay, because our soul is always like strive for happiness. It's eternal.
Yeah, but when,
happiness,
instead of
blissful.
happiness by going to the nightclub in Bellevue to do the Bhangra
Okay,
all
material
night
happiness,
long,
yeah.
right? You come to the temple and do the Prabhupada two-step all night long, okay?
Yeah.
And we also have the, what do you call that? The Jagran, right? All night. Yeah, all night dancing and feasting and singing. We also do that. They do it in Bellevue in the nightclub, and we also do it here. But their thing is nonsense, and this thing is real. That's the only difference. This is for Krishna, and that's for their own sense gratification. But wait a minute. Before Narada Muni was Narada Muni, he was a Gandharva, and the Devas, they organized kirtan also on the heavenly planets, and he was a Gandharva, so he could sing really nicely. So this story is in the Bhagavatam, and he was leading a big kirtan, and all the apsaris, these beautiful women, made a circle around him, and they were jumping up and down, their breasts were going up and down, and he was chanting enthusiastically, and he was cursed by the saints that were there for putting on a show rather than chanting sincerely. He was cursed, and that's why he took birth as the son of a single-parent mother who was extremely poor. So we have to be careful also about chanting and dancing in the temple. It's not to attract people to ourselves, or it's not so that we impress people with our chanting. It's only because we should please the Lord by the chanting and dancing, not please ourselves, right? And you can read that history in the Bhagavad Gita of Narada Muni. He was cursed because he made a show of it. Haribol.